You're still out of your house.
Everyone, welcome. How are we doing? Woo! All right. Yes, we need that energy right now. Welcome to a celebration of literature and living writers. I'm Megan Marshall. I'm the director of the Hugh C. Hyde Reading Writers Series. And tonight is the final event of the fall series, but I couldn't think of a better way to conclude the semester than by celebrating the official launch of Poetry International, issue number 29. Yes, it is here in all of its beautiful glory. Congratulations.
Very nice.
On sale at a special price in the back for anyone who's interested. We have a lot of cool stuff planned for you this evening, including some free book giveaways. But before we get to that, I do want to thank those folks who have helped to make this series and this evening possible. And that includes all of our friends at Love Library. I think my co-host Markle Tumlin deserves a special round of applause for all he does. And I want to thank Laurel Bliss and Rebecca Williamson. In addition, I want to thank the Department of English and Comparative Literature for their continued support of the series. And tonight, a special shout out to Professor Beth Weeks and her fabulous students who created these amazing broadsides that you see over here, and more on that soon. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay. It's also paramount to acknowledge the space that we are privileged to share this evening. For millennia, the Kumeyaay people have been a part of this land. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations. And as members of the SDSU community, we acknowledge and celebrate this legacy. All right, lastly, if you have yet to do so, please silence your cell phones and know that the event is being recorded, but don't worry, all you see is this space up here. If you are interested in viewing the recording after the event, in addition to many amazing other living writers related content, please check us out on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. We love to see you. All right, I am pleased to introduce our fearless, fabulous, unflappable editor-in-chief of Poetry International, Sandra Alcocer, who has been an indelible mentor to me and many other students, and who I'm now privileged to call a colleague and a friend. Sandra wears many hats aside from her work at PI, including award-winning poet, scholar, and founder, and now co-director of SDSU's MFA program in creative writing. Her books of poetry, A Fish to Feed All Hunger and Accept by Nature, received the highest honors from National Poetry Series, Academy of American Poets, and Associated Writing programs, as well as the Larry Levis Award and the William Stafford Award for Poetry. Her 4 artist book collaborations with Brighton Press have been exhibited internationally and reside in museum and special collections. And if that wasn't cool enough, she was the National Endowment for the Arts' first conservation poet for the Wildlife Conservation Society and Poets House, New York, as well as Montana's first poet laureate, and recipient of the Merriam Award for Distinguished Contribution to Montana Literature. So please give a warm welcome to Sandra.
And Megan would, will you be able to? Oh, Sakinah? Yeah. Okay. Well, you're all looking far more energetic and less disheveled than those of us who've been here teaching all day or in meetings, and just finished about 5 minutes before we came running in the door. So thank you all for being here and for helping us celebrate Poetry International. And I want to say a bit more about Markle Tumlin, and I want to thank him personally for making something happen that I want you all to be aware of. If you go out that door and you turn left at the first corridor, and then you turn left again, you will come to the creative writing reading corner. And I can't believe how long this has taken to actually be in place, but it is through your work, Markle, So if you're inspired tonight by the whole idea of reading literary journals, all you have to do is walk out that door left and sit down, and you'll be able to read some of the best literary journals in the country. So another hand for Mark. So I'm going to begin with a little fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a microbiologist who spoke many languages and traveled the world. He was a patron of the arts and an excellent ballroom dancer who lived his whole life at home with his mother. Lavinia Adele Moses Watkins described in the history as the woman who presided with gracious hospitality over their home and was active in the poetry hour. And when his mother died before him, as mothers often do, unfortunately, he wanted to do something to honor her spirit, and he conceived of a journal that would bring the voices of the world together in its pages. The Watkins, who lived and died in the 20th century, gifted us over 25 years ago with an endowment that makes Poetry International possible. And so we are ever so grateful to them. I'm just sorry that they're no longer here to see what fruits have come from their belief in poetry. So why an international poetry journal? Poetry exists exactly at that axis where the language of the soul meets the language of the tribe. Fredmore Marco, a professor in the Department of English and Comparative Literature at SDSU, was the first editor of Poetry International, and that was the way that he closed his opening essay. 12 years later, Ukrainian-American poet Ilya Kaminsky, PI's second editor, wrote, "Reading an anthology of world poetry gives one a chance to overhear similarities, that is, moments where authors of different geographical and historical circumstances, languages, and traditions seem to address each other in their work. I hope these voices brought from outside our borders will allow us, in this somewhat unsettling time in Anglo-American political history." Now, that was written probably 15 years ago, so where are we today? Maybe it's always an unsettling time in Anglo-American political history to find the voice within that is strong and compelling, an instrument of poetry, which, to rephrase Auden, is our chief means of breaking bread with the world. Auden actually said that art was our chief means of breaking bread with the dead. Well, we do a bit of that, but that idea that we learn from what's come before us, but that isn't enough. As we know, as students and writers, we want to know what's out in front of us, and so that's the privilege that we get to have. So, as a third editor of Poetry International, I'm privileged to enter this collaboration. My work being to listen closely and uncover, if I can, the conversation between American poets and the poets of the world. And so we're going to open tonight, and we're going to open and close with American poets. And in between that time, you could be visiting poets if you had PI 29, poets from Portugal, Brazil, Spain, Italy, Poland, Mexico, Iran, Djibouti, Albania, Greece, and Australia. So for our first American poet, this is someone I selected for the Cavafy Prize. The Cavafy Prize is open. Oh, it just closed. But we're still working on the PI Prize. And September 1st to December 1st are the dates for that. Sakinah Hofler. Sakinah Hofler is a poet and a prose writer who is working on her first book of poetry. And see, those of you who haven't finished your first book of poetry, you can send out to the world and win prizes. And she's also working on her first book, or her first novel. I can't believe she's doing both at the same time and manages to stay sane. But she teaches writing at Princeton University. And so this is the opening poem for Poetry International 29.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sakinah Hofler, and I will be reading my poem, Breathe, Goddess Sings, for the Dark Sons of America. We have to give him the talk. My husband says as he lists the last 3 items on our registry: the Graco 401 convertible crib, the diaper genie, 2 dozen bibs, with certainty of not if, but when. Perhaps between bedtime stories so our boy won't have bad dreams, or before a Sunday dessert of blueberry cobbler and ice cream. Or before he gets into superhero movies, modern Greek tragedies, the hero's journey, where the hero must fall to be reborn and return as a hero. Only we must ensure our son understands if he falls. If he fails to follow the same lessons his father learned, keep your hands where they can see them, no fast movements, don't raise your voice, yes sirs and no sirs, there will be no rebirth, no journey, no hero. Just another data point joining legions of others lost in newspaper articles and social media replays, and shared and shared and shared until he's replaced by the next and the next, forgotten by all except us, the ones who first held him close. Grieve, Goddess sings, for our son, whom we must prepare for both life and death, while he blossoms in my belly, no bigger than a coconut. So thank you. I wish I could be there with you guys. I'm glad I could be here via like virtual virtuosity. And I just want to say, the only thing I want to say about this poem is that we will have to give our son a talk. And this is really one of those poems where there was a moment when I said, wow, and it kind of took the joy in a way out of motherhood, but hopefully we'll never have that moment. And we get to love and enjoy him every single day. But one day we will have to have the talk. All right. But that's what poetry does. It allows us to explore our fears. All right. Have a great event, everyone.
Sakinah Hofler is immediately followed by an Iranian activist now exiled and living in the United States, who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, Fatima Shams. Her translator, poet Armin Davoudian, in his introduction, writes of her living in a third space, one defined by psychologist W.D. Winnicott, where our creative lives transpire, the space of play and the space of art, a safe space for experimentation separated from the world out there by a kind of enclosure or frame. And I'm going to read one of those poems to give you an idea of the enclosure he's speaking of. Her poems often make reference to a type of enclosure, a safe space. Suitcase. Together we walked in streets where there was no sign of love. The suitcase and I, my hands in its hands. It followed me on the south of Spain, to the old port of Marseille, to Berlin, to all the cities in whose streets I had kissed you and never will. I had never kissed you and never will. Like a scratched song on a phonograph, like a relationship barely alive, you're nowhere to be found in this small, light suitcase, not even in the weightless photographs, or in a piece of poem forgotten in a pocket. There's no room for you in my small suitcase. I travel light, so light I could almost resign myself to leaving. And now I want to introduce there you are, our production editor for the print journal, Sam Ziji, who is currently assembling a portfolio of Syrian poets for our next issue. He is of Syrian and Cuban descent. He also played an important role in the assemblage of this particular portfolio that I was reading from of Fatima Shams. And so I've asked him if he could come up and talk a little bit about that kind of collaboration that takes place in so many different ways at Poetry International. So Sam, would you come up, please?
Everyone, can you hear me? Yeah, so this was a unique pleasure because the Persian language is written with the Arabic alphabet. It's a modified Arabic alphabet. It has a couple more letters because there are sounds in Persian you don't have in Arabic, like a ch. And one of our challenges, and honestly the thing that I spent the most time on, in helping, copy, edit, and do the various things a production editor has to do, was kind of troubleshooting some of the formatting issues we're having in Adobe Acrobat with and Adobe Illustrator as well, because that's what our graphic designer uses, with the Persian letters. Because if you don't know, the Persian and Arabic alphabets are kind of, each letter has an initial form, a medial form, and a final form, depending on where it is in the word and what letters come before and after. And unfortunately, the software, when we put the portfolio in, and initially it just like separated all the letters, as if they were like in the Latin alphabet, which is not at all how it should look. So we spent a long time, and I collaborated with our graphic designer on this. We spent a long time trying to get everything kind of together, and they're also, in Persian and Arabic, small vowels or diacritical marks that go above and below the letters. It's a very complicated system. So that was one of the pleasures of this, and one of the challenges. And would you like me to read the poem yet? Sure. So I'm going to actually read one of my favorite poems that we worked on. And I have to say too, working, with all this super technical stuff and the kind of like granular attention that, copy editing and production editing demands, still didn't take away the joy of these poems and the profundity of them. And honestly, like, even just choosing a poem to read for today, I was reading this portfolio again, and I was like, these are like really good. Like, I don't know. Like, so that's part of what Sandra was talking about, is you're collaborating, with people from all over the world who, I don't actually understand Persian, but I can read the letters because I know Arabic, because the letters are the same. So there's that kind of like appreciation that you have, that kind of communion with people who you may never meet, but you meet through their words. So this is a poem called Medic, and there's a note by Shams, by the poet. She says, Medic here is a person's name. It's also a Turkish city on the border with Greece, where migrants trying to cross into Europe are often detained. 98 days since the key last turned in the lock. Someone has opened your windows to air out the stench of death. Your neighbors summoned to testify. Everything in its place. Your keychain with the little rainbow, your kitchen knives, your cracked and mismatched coffee mugs, the Turkish translation of Brothers Karamazov, your cat's hair stubborn on my shirt. Everything in its place, except the pool of dry blood which has been washed from the floor. I think this is a kind of profound meditation on, this is an address to a refugee, and I think it's very timely, obviously, and I think it's very powerful, and yeah, I really appreciate, this portfolio, and I appreciate all of the portfolios here. So thank you.
was a third year MFA student, and when we get to this point, I can't believe you. I'm really happy that you're flying off into the world, but I can't believe we're going to lose you. So now I want to introduce you to a first year MFA poet who has, I think, one of the most impossible jobs. She is our submissions editor. Her name is Annabella Nordland, and it's a juggler's job. She has to take all of the poems from all of these, from the Cavafy Prize, the Poetry International Prize, the Winter Tiny Chapbook Competition, and the Summer Tiny Chapbook Competition. Keep those all running. How many submissions did we just read for the Cavafy?
300?
300? I thought it was more than that. Okay.
415 for the PI prize.
Okay, 415, and that is at least 3 poems. And we don't do it alone, and we don't make these decisions alone. We also have a gathering of 30 interns that are divided up between submissions, production of the print journal, PI online, and social media. And you'll be meeting those people, those collaborators as well. But I knew the minute, first of all, I read Annabella's poems, and then I saw that she had an MA in translation theory, and I thought, I know who I want to come into this. And she did it together, she's doing it together with someone who graduated last year, Luis Torres, who was the first one who showed us that this was actually possible for one person to carry out and remain sane. So Annabella, you want to come up and read another Cavafy Prize winner?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I'll be reading Épicerie-l'Idéal by Holly Pollard, which is French for the ideal grocery store or a perfect supermarket. And I did a bit of research on this. It's a real place in Marseille, France. And I've been to Marseille, but I've never been to this supermarket, and I regret that. So I need to go back. So I'll just read it. Épicerie-l'Idéal. Pork terrine, olives and figs pressed in like some brazen spam pink terrazzo. Proud, gilded pastry, its blistered edge tamed by the pudge of familiar hands. The cross-section of a boiled egg, confessing its gluey yolk under the electric hum of white light. All things glittering, set against the basket weave of textured steel, a stage for the pickled Baroque. Anchovy eyes pleading through stagnant oil. Lettuce leaves like petticoats, the clamber of cheese, and the opulent shrivel of a sun-dried tomato. The allure of things behind glass I need to understand. That jar of preserved somethings, the fleshy parts that glut from the open top, spilling themselves as from an overstuffed trunk, whilst others are committed to the bottom, flattened, resigned to meditate as ovals, to conserve time as it melts across the blinding azul. The delicious spoils of the Mediterranean, separated by brine into their jewels, crystallized like light shined through water, flecks of color too close to decipher, the granular in the analog photograph, the cracking of stained glass and its impossible projection left on the wall. So I love this poem because I feel like it's just a whimsical snapshot into this grocery store we're in. There's so many beautiful sonic moments and colors, but wedged within all of that is just a very human question of wondering what is behind this glass, these things behind glass I need to understand. So I just loved that. Thank you.
And then the last collaborator I'm going to introduce, well, I don't need to introduce her, you know who she is. But she has been the person that I've collaborated with for almost 20 years. And I keep saying, oh, we can't ask her to do this. We can't add another grain of sand to her life. But she manages to do it all with such grace and energy. She fortunately had a career as a dancer before she became a poet and a scholar and a teacher of just about everything in the English department. She not only directs living writers, she teaches editing and publishing and fiction and poetry. And we are fortunate to have her as our managing editor. Please welcome Megan Marshall.
Thank you, Sandra. Just keep giving me those grains of sand. They're all.
Be careful what you ask.
Just kidding. All right, well, yeah, it's kind of cool to be behind the podium with sort of, a different iteration of things that I do as managing editor at Poetry International. It's just such a wonderful experience to work with such talented and bright and excited editors and interns, and our, both editors in chief. I think, at PI, community and literary citizenship are really important to us. And so, of course, we aim to be a part of the global, span of arts and letters and poetics, but we also, it's really important to us to be a part of our local community, San Diego and SDSU. And so that's why I think it was so special to collaborate with Professor Beth Weeks and her art and design students this semester to create these beautiful broadsides that you see. And if you're not familiar with the term broadside, essentially it's just a single sheet of paper that's printed on one side. And historically they were meant as sort of like a cultural, political sort of ephemera that were meant to announce, maybe an event that was happening or some sort of proclamation or a call to action, or even like, I don't know, a wanted poster. But what I think is cool about broadsides, in addition to just being these kind of beautiful aspects of ephemeral art, is that it represents this kind of critical nexus between oral tradition and print. And so for our project, but Professor Weeks' students, they each chose a poem from issue 29. And as you can see, each one has their own kind of individual interpretation of the poem's meaning. And I think that's really what makes them so special, is that you see the students sort of lens their aspects of their own reading of the poem in the way in which they chose to apply the text or the image, the page. I don't have the vocabulary, though I did learn some from her class, but sort of the design strategies, the types of font that reference the poems in specific ways, or that, kind of tease out different aspects of the poem. So if you haven't had a chance to do so, please make sure that you check these out, admire them, because the students really put a lot of work and thought and effort. And I also just had some great conversations via email about the poems in the journal. So, like I said, community is important to us, and it's just always a wonderful opportunity to have these collaborative events where we can expand our community. So thank you again so much to Beth Weeks and her students. The poem I'm going to read is from the poet Ana Luísa Amaral. I had the pleasure and honor of hosting Anna for a Living Writers event several years ago before her death. And she, in addition to just being such a talented, extraordinary poet and scholar, she had this kind of grand but humble personality. She was really, her work is a lot about like humanism and connecting with others. And she was always very engaging, and she was sort of chain smoking, and she had all these interesting stories. And so I really, really enjoyed her visit and happy that we were able to feature a folio of her poems in PI 29. So the poem that I'm going to read is, if you want to follow along, it's on page 120, and it's called What's in a Name, and it's translated from the Portuguese by Margaret Jull Costa. Tell me, what's in a name? How solid is a name if answered to? By what parallel wars is it sustained? Lineages, subject lands, races tamed by a few syllables, history's foundations set in laws forged in fire and flame? Remove the name and love will still remain, as will you and I, even in death, even if only as myth. Yes, even as myth. Do you hear? Even our brief history that some will read as mere inert matter will remain for our all too human eternity, and others will take it up when their century most needs it. And my love, my stronger half, we, for them, will be like the rose. No, like its perfume, ungovernable, free. I don't need to say anything about the poem, because it says it about itself. I love a poem that kind of punches you in the gut in the right way at the end, and the last two lines, no, like its perfume, ungovernable, but free. Really like them. All right, well, I have the pleasure of introducing our other fearless, fantastic, unflappable editor-in-chief of Poetry International online, Blas Falconer. He is responsible for giving our sad old website a beautiful facelift and complete artistic overhaul. He had this really wonderful vision, as you know, Blas does have these, you know, sort of wonderful ideas to align sort of like the prestige that our print journal has earned with our online presence. And if you see the work he has curated, I mean, over the past year, and really, I think with the newest stuff we have, it's really a testament to this vision, and he's going to show you in a minute. But like Sandra, he wears many different hats as well, aside from his work at PI. He's the author of 4 poetry collections. The latest is Where Avis, which came out in 2024. He's a co-editor of 2 essay collections, including The Other Latinx, Writing Against a Singular Identity, and Mentor and Muse, Essays from Poets to Poets. His poem has been featured by Poetry, Harvard Review, New York Times, and his award includes fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Tennessee Arts Commission and Poets and Writers. And of course, as you all know, he teaches some very lucky students here in the MFA program at SDSU. So please welcome Blas Falconer.
I'm so happy to be here. So happy to celebrate this issue. I won't take too much time to talk about Poetry International online, but I do think it's appropriate because we work together so well. When we started working on the online journal, we really wanted to feature the work that the print journal is doing. So if you visit the site, which I hope you will, you go to issue 29, you'll see a little bit more about, thank you. A little bit more about the current issue, and you can scroll down, and there's even a kind of sampling of some of the poems. Yeah, you can purchase. You can also purchase the issue. So of course, this is really important. One thing that you should know is that Sandra and I are often talking about the work that we're publishing. Sometimes she finds a poet that she really admires and wants to share with me. Sometimes I find a poet. Sometimes we fight over, not fight, but we gently challenge each other for certain poems that we want to publish. And so here is a sampling of this latest issue that we're putting out right now. I'm still refining. I'm finding little bugs here and there, but we're going to launch next week on social media. I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about what we're presenting. So here we have 2 folios. This is an idea I took from Sandra to publish a collection, a short collection of poems with some prose, kind of to offer more context. We have one from Unsung Masters, the poet Rolando Cardenas, who's a Chilean poet. And we have Martin Rock wrote a folio on Shuntaro Tanikawa's poetry, a beloved Japanese poet. And then if you scroll down a little bit, we can see dispatches, which are short essays, book reviews. We started to include born digital poetry, so electronic poetry. Some of our poets who are in the MFA program who know much more about this than I do are kind of leading that cause, and they're doing a beautiful job there. And then we have podcasts and interviews as well. And again, some of our brilliant MFA students are kind of leading that, and we're happy to give them a platform. On the left, you'll see some of the poems that we're featuring in this issue, and I thought I would just play one. I think I want to go with The Horse by Katie Ford. And we can listen to her read it.
The horse. When in the field, the woman often wrapped herself into a pose called horse. She blocked her face to become the horse's head as she entwined her arms. Somewhere a list of her broken thoughts wasn't burned, but folded carefully and torn into quarter strips of cloth, left strewn in the grass where wrens might dip down for nesting strands. The woman was one of the lucky, knowing there's no need to burn the mind's errors as some miniature rehearsal for what death might someday obliterate anyway. In horse, it was the full obliteration she practiced. And like all difficult postures, it couldn't be held indefinitely. She knew this, yet she didn't want to release it. Her face began to tremble as she exerted force upon the posture. She didn't want to return to herself, which was the exact moment she was no longer fused with horse. Horse had fled for the lower field, where, grazing now on clover, she rippled inside the sound of herself, quiet and light, one leaflet of clover folding over another, inside the full of her and the dark.
Just an extraordinary poet. If you go on the website, we also have an archive of other, you can actually click on her name and then you can see there's an archive, but we store lots of poems by different poets over the years. And we have poems by her, poems that originally appeared in the print journal. So we're really proud of the work we're doing. And that's a whole team of people doing that. So anyway, I'm thrilled to be a part of this and so happy to celebrate this issue with everybody. I'm going to introduce now a couple of other editors who are going to read poems. First, we have Artrice Bennett, who's the online production editor. Come on up.
Hello, hi, I'm happy to be here. I am going to read actually from Paola Loretto's collection in the issue 29 from her book In Quota. And this was translated from the Italian by Haley Gross. So Paola Loretto is an Italian poet, scholar, educator, translator, all of the things, amazing. And Haley Gross actually was able to correspond with her during the process of translating these poems. And I think that's really amazing. And you can definitely read the intention and the care that Gross put into the translation of it to is not, lose any of the meaning of the original poems. I had such a hard time picking a poem. All of them are really good. And I actually just changed my mind. I'm going to read, excuse my awful pronunciation, Between the Meadows of Vigna and Spiazza dell'Acqua. There's this river that's a scarlet ribbon, entangled among the stones, brown stones, yellow stones, brown stones, beautiful stones, and that speaks Only God knows how much it speaks and calms me, takes my spirit, bundles it up, and lays it down on its side, slowly, under the pine tree. It wants me to listen and stay forever while it flows without ennui. For here, time is full, and I don't feel it, and I'm not alone. I think that Loretto is noted as having a strong female voice that speaks to nature in this really beautiful way that is rooted in reality. I think we can relate to feeling loneliness, but finding that peace and that comfort in nature. It's really beautiful. So definitely read the entire collection.
Next, we are going to have our social media editor, Grace Matthews, read.
Thank you, boss. And I just wanted to say too, this is my first semester on the PI team, and I'm so proud to be here and proud to work with all the other editors. So I'm going to be reading Icarus over Athens by Vasiliki Albero. When I was looking back over issue 29, I was just taken with the way that Albero writes history and myth into our present moment. So that's why I picked this poem. Icarus over Athens, this world an ever-living fire, Heraclitus. I passed the bankrupt, airless office blocks, the sex shops mushrooming the outskirts. I saw the gutted farmhouses and the cops steeped in foxfire and carrion. I saw the bone-white bloom of the magnolia, open like a fontanelle, and on I rose, saw landfills creeping on the suburbs, streets fitful with sirens. I saw the city's labyrinth, and then I knew the only way out was up. A little bit more about Albedo, who is a poet living in Greece. The Poetry Society noted that Albedo has worked in fuel cell technology as a children's entertainer and in the daycare center of a psychiatric hospital, along with also working for NGOs promoting green technology. And I feel that you can really see the breadth of this varied background at work in her unique poetics and the way that she brings myth into the Anthropocene. So yeah, I was just very taken with this poem, and I recommend going through issue 29 and looking at the rest of her work in there. Thank you.
I think this is the last poem, is that right? Okay. I don't. All right. And so we're going to begin with an American poet and end on an American poet. So finally, I would like to introduce Adam O. Davis, who is the author of Index of Haunted Houses and the recipient of the Poetry International Prize. His poem, Pyrrhic Symphony, was selected by Kevin Proofer and is published in this latest issue. And recently, Adam received news that his second collection of poetry won the University of Nebraska Hilda Raz Prize.
Raz Shoemaker.
Raz Shoemaker Prize,
That's it,
right? And this is the title poem for that
This is
manuscript.
it,
Yeah, so Pyrrhic Symphony, that's coming out.
September 2026.
Excellent.
That's
So
it.
keep an eye out for that. And now will you come read your poem?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you win the Poetry International Prize, you are contractually obliged to name your next collection. That has to be the title poem. Otherwise, Sandra will beat me. Far too kind for that. It's, you've come a long way to end up back in San Diego. I live in North Park, and I do want to express I'm so grateful for the for Poetry International, for SDSU, for the MFA program. And just for the opportunity to be here. It means a lot that this poem, which was inspired by San Diego, ended up in this journal. And it's been wonderful to share it so many times and to also make so many great friendships and friendships and also thank you for having me. A little preamble here, and forgive me if you've heard this before, but during the pandemic, I'm a teacher. I was at home teaching online virtually, and my daughters were too young for me to teach. I teach high school English. And so the only thing I could really do to not go crazy with all this was to drive around town. This was back when the beaches were shut down, parks were shut down, couldn't really go anywhere or do anything. So we would drive around. One day on a long drive, we ended up in Coronado. And we parked there on the beach. We couldn't go out, but far in the distance, about a mile offshore, you could see all these cruise ships just anchored. And if you looked really closely, you could see people on the cruise ships just walking, only one or two. And these people were the people who were employed by the cruise lines. One of the interesting things about the cruise ships during the pandemic was if you were a paying customer, you got off. If you were a worker, you were stuck on that ship for God knows how long. And so sitting there, trapped in our car, watching these people trapped on this boat, which is effectively a giant floating septic tank or shopping mall, depending on how you feel about cruise ships. You may glean how I feel based on that statement. It struck me as just this terrible kind of metaphor for capitalism and consumerism, and also our experience during the pandemic. And I thought back to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which you've seen. It's the zombies end up returning to the shopping mall, and before they start tearing everyone apart, they start looking through the glass displays of the stores, looking at shoes and dresses and Cinnabons, and just remembering their consumers' past. So that's what we've got. It's called Pyrrhic Symphony, and it's for my daughters because they are here with me now, and it's always a pleasure to be able to share. So they wonder why I spend so much time on my own writing. So it's a great pleasure to be able to show them. This is what I do. Pyrrhic Symphony. 9 months now of news that is not news. There has been weather and there has been food. On the horizon, cruise ships still crude, their white dream of hospitality gone silent as the sun. Nothing to do, nothing to do. I sit patient as an animal in its zoo, my rage fixed like a fascinator on my head. Here on the wholesale Pacific, the electronic doors of electronic stores go untroubled. The wind is against us, and the supermarkets are full of people hoarding frozen pizza. The freeways are quiet. Birds are on the move. The sky is a color the sky hasn't been in a century. Still, we long to get back to business, to buzz and branch out, to beat any price, honor any coupon, all while the kids Jeremiah on gigs fetch us supper, swooping like bats from business to home and back. Nurse, will you think less of me if I tell you I hurt? That fear pulls through me like a needle drawn by a magnet, that my blood is haunted by the memory of rain, that when I was a child, I watched a house burn down without thought of the people inside it, that while they were being refugeed in a country so fixed on wealth that car crashes promised not only neck brace, but windfall, I thought only of a cup of ice-cold milk. I will never know what happened to them. And they will never know I write this 35 years later, still warm with the memory of their home's immolation, fire bright against the blackening frame, the desert reverent around it, so quiet you could hear the sand crackle as it turned to glass. I recall a light rain tapping on the temperance of my skull as between the fire and my 5-year-old self, a warm hand of wind ran its fingers over the entire state of Arizona to ask, "How you doing?" And then, before anyone could answer, "Hey, have a nice day."